Welcome back to my channel. I'm Kathleen. Today I'm excited to share with you guys my Grandma Jeanne's Italian meatballs. I have been getting lots of requests to have easy recipes on here, and I'm excited to record this recipe. That way, if anybody in my family wants to make it, we have it documented here. These are hands down the best meatballs that you will ever eat. I kid you not, I will not even eat any other meatballs because I find them very dense and hard and just that's not appealing to me. But my Grandma Jeanne's meatballs, they are light and fluffy and cheesy, and they're honestly very easy, minimal ingredients, minimal prep, and the taste is just out of this world. We have had people who have dined at my grandmother's house once, and you see them years later, and they're always asking, "How is your grandmother? I love her meatballs." So I kid you not, this is the only recipe you will ever need for meatballs, I promise. So I'm going to start here with some very stale French bread. You're going to need either a half loaf of Italian bread or French bread. Very, very stale. And I'm talking rock hard stale because we are going to submerge it in water and kind of rehydrate it. I know that sounds a little strange, but this is the key to making the most delicious, moist, fluffy meatballs that you will ever have. So you'll notice above my bananas, I always have some stale bread going on so I can make these meatballs whenever I want. And I'm just going to fill up a large bowl, put that bread in there, and then this one was a little bit slightly more than a half loaf, so I'm going to submerge it a little bit and then break it in half so that way it can totally soak while I preheat the oven. You're going to set your oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. And while the oven is preheating and while you're gathering your ingredients, you're just going to let this bread soak and it's going to rehydrate it. And I promise you, I know it seems like a very odd step, but this is truly the key to making the best meatballs you will ever make. And another thing that makes these the best meatballs ever is you're going to use real Parmesan cheese or pecorino cheese. And I say real cheese because in the stores you find those grated cheeses in the pasta aisle that they're filled with so many fillers, they're not real cheese, and it does not have the same effect. So I encourage you get some real cheese, and I like to go back over to the bowl of water and kind of push the bread down because it will kind of start to float to the top, and we want to make sure every part of that bread gets rehydrated. And in the meanwhile, you can go ahead and line your baking sheet. We're going to use a large baking sheet here, or you can use two smaller baking sheets. Line them with either non-stick aluminum foil or parchment paper like I'm using here. You can absolutely fry these meatballs in batches over the stove. I don't like to do that, and one day I put them in the oven and Russell could not tell that I didn't fry them, so I will continue to bake mine. My grandmother goes between frying them and baking them, so it's still within her realm of this recipe, so I'm not taking too many liberties here by baking them. And now we're just going to take that bread, squeeze as much of the water out as we can over the bowl, and then I'm going to place it onto a clean dish towel, and then we will wring out the rest of the water using the dish towel. It just makes it a lot easier. And we're going to go ahead and save that bowl because that's the bowl we're also going to make our meatball mixture in. So after you've poured out the water, just rinse it out and set it aside. I'm so excited to share this recipe with you guys because it is a family favorite. And like I said earlier, I like being able to record it and have it here so that way, when my nieces grow up and they want to make their great grandmother's meatballs, they have the recipe for it. Or my brother or my sister-in-law, because I know my sister knows how to make these. But that's one of the things that I like about this YouTube channel is being able to document things that hopefully, generations after they can make this recipe as well and think of their great grandmother, and you can make them and think of my grandmother. So now after we squeezed all of that water out, we're just going to place it back into the bowl along with 1 pound of ground beef. Now there's absolutely been recipes that I've seen where people use sausage and ground beef. I really encourage you just stick to the ground beef in this recipe. I promise it's all you need for the best meatballs that you will ever have. And now we're going to crack in 1 large egg. This recipe has very few ingredients, which I love. We're going to do 1 teaspoon of sea salt. If you're using iodized salt, use a little bit less. And then I just like to do a pinch of black pepper. You don't need a lot. And we're going to sprinkle in, I don't usually measure it, but it's probably about a half teaspoon if you measure out the garlic powder and the dried parsley. But that's the fun thing about this recipe. You really can just eyeball things and you're not going to mess it up, I promise. The cheese, I encourage you, measure it with your heart. That's what I always do. It's probably about a little more than a half cup, maybe a half to a third cup, but hey, the more cheese, the better. Now roll up those sleeves and we're going to use our God-given utensils here to mix this. You can absolutely go in with a spatula. I just find that the ingredients never get as well incorporated as it does when I just go all in with some clean hands and get all of those ingredients well acquainted with each other. And I feel like if we are homemakers, we are not squeamish about doing these kinds of things. We can always wash our hands after, which we absolutely will do. And now I'm going to show you, you can use a large ice cream scoop or a large cookie scoop. I like to do the ice cream scoop, which just means you're going to bake them a little bit longer. I will put all of this into the description, so if you're making them the size of the ice cream scoop or the large cookie scoop, I will have cooking times for both in the description. And I like to use the scoops because it makes them the same size, which means that they will all cook evenly. And you're just going to go ahead and scoop it out, roll it around, pat it in your hand just to make a ball. Don't drive yourself crazy. It doesn't have to be perfect. I think that is something that needs to be said so often when we are cooking. You do not have to be perfect at something to start. And the more we do it, the better we become at these things. So practice makes perfect. Just get in the kitchen, have fun, experiment with things that you love. And I promise you, over time, you'll just be doing these things and it will just be second nature. You won't even really be thinking about it anymore. Like when I do this recipe, I just do it completely from memory at this point. I do have my grandma's recipe written down in a notebook, which I encourage you to do that. Get a cute notebook, keep it in your kitchen. Recipes that you love, write them down. That way you have them on hand. But the more you make them, most of the time, unless they have a lot of ingredients, you're not even going to need to go ahead and refer to it. But it's all about practice. It's all about putting in the effort and honing the skill that anybody can do if they take the time to do it. So I promise you, if you're nervous to be in the kitchen, don't be. Just get in there, have fun, make memories, and you will be surprised with what will come out of your time in the kitchen. And we're just going to keep repeating this until we use up all of the meatball mixture. And I encourage you guys, make a double batch and freeze them. They freeze beautifully. You can heat them up easily in pasta sauce. This is definitely a recipe that you're going to want to double, maybe even triple. Now we just have the last one here. Getting that onto the sheet. And now I'm going to just quickly wash my hands. And then we are just going to do one last step before we get these into the oven. I cannot wait, you guys, to have these tonight. I'm making them ahead of time because I'm going to be making sauce later, and I will just put them in the sauce to heat them back up. Now we're just going to drizzle them generously with extra virgin olive oil before we get them into the oven. And now I am doing the ice cream scoop size. So they are very large meatballs. So I'm going to put them in the oven and check on them at about 40 minutes. If you have a meat thermometer, it's always a good idea to use that, especially when you're getting used to cooking. This, I can usually eyeball it and tell by the color and the sizzle that they are done. But if you are hesitant to just eyeball it that way, I will be putting the cooking times in the description, but you can always use a meat thermometer just to be safe. You want this to be 165 degrees Fahrenheit. And thank you guys so much for spending time with me today, letting me share with you my grandmother's Italian meatball recipe. I hope you guys make these and let me know in the comments if you have a favorite family recipe. And be sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss future content. Bye.